love Canada. I love talking about Canada. So we welcome a Canadian guest, Jayce Loh of PointsNerd.
Hi, Stefan. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for making time. You've just taken on a big new job, and I'm curious about all of that. But by the profile picture you're showing, it looks like you are a family traveler and a road warrior. So tell us what your travel profile is.
Yeah, I mean, typically, we travel, one or two times per year for big trips. Typically, I'd like to take a month off and take a full trip, and usually that means hitting as many continents as possible and as many new countries as possible. We're trying to do what you do and try to hit all the countries, but I've got a goal of hitting 100 countries for my daughter by the time she turns 18, and she's 11 now, and about 42 countries. So doing okay, but it might be a bit of a stretch to get to 100, but we're trying. Typically my wife and I travel with our daughter, and we like to travel in business class, but we're not too good to fly economy on occasion. So typically on domestic and transborder flights, we're typically flying on economy, just because I can't fathom the price difference as an Asian to pay double for substandard business class. So that's typically what we do for family travel, and then for me for business, I do take a decent amount of trips. With my new job, I'm expecting that I'm going to be doing a lot more travel as the COVID crisis abates, but until then, I'm kind of stuck at home, working from home, and itching to travel, like I'm sure many of you and your listeners are itching to do as well.
Fantastic. And so that's three, and that's one more person that makes it
Easy,
generally somewhat easy for points travel.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were looking at so we're planning on going to Japan in March, and we've routed in Japan Airlines first class over to Tokyo and then down to Singapore. Coming back from Singapore, we're flying Singapore business class, but to be quite honest, I'm thinking of changing that because it doesn't look all that appealing, to be frank. And we're looking at potentially using some of the Alaska miles I have and flying Emirates first through Dubai. But yeah, easy to find two, hard to find three.
And what's not appealing about the Singapore option you're seeing? Is it
when I end up searching for reward flights, I often do a lot of due diligence through YouTube and watch a lot of YouTube videos on the quality of the product, and both soft and hard. And to be honest, it just doesn't look that appealing. And the stories I've read on the people taking the flights from Singapore to EWR, not the greatest things I've heard. So I'm a little hesitant. And the fact is that, we're flying on Alaska Redemption, and it's 100,000 points each. So it's really not that appealing when you consider that Cathay First is 80,000 or 70,000. So Singapore was kind of, we had sat in the seats when we were out in Cape Town in one of the malls out there and saw the wide business class seat, and always wanted to try it. But now I'm having some reservations. But I don't know if you've flown it before and have any opinion, but I'd be interested to hear your opinion on that.
I've learned that in blogging, if I say even the slightest critical thing about Singapore, someone with a Singapore IP address who has never read my blog will appear and rip me to shreds. I do not like the carpet in Singapore airport, and I hear it, but I feel like the carpet makes me feel like it's an off-strip Vegas casino rather than this great international airport. But I've actually not flown mainline Singapore. I've flown Silk Air several times.
Okay.
And used it for regional flights, but I lived in mainland China for a decade, and Singapore Airlines was always more pricey cash-wise and more out of the way than anything I wanted. So it was really just when I supplemented with Silk, which Silk Air is perfectly fine. It's not really a budget Expedia. I don't know what to call it, regional mid-range, and that's perfectly fine. But I've not been on mainline. I've been curious. Where I live in Seattle, that nonstop service started last fall, and I just didn't convince my wife to try it when it was easy to try it, and so I can't help you there.
Okay.
I'm curious. I felt like years ago I loved the Northwest 747 business class seat, which was like ultra private. And then one time I was flying, and a family near me, the mother was worried because she had no visibility to what her kids were doing, and so for her it wasn't a good seat. And how different it is as a family. And then and I feel like, say, like Virgin Atlantic would probably be really fun for a kid. So through your daughter's eyes, what product has she tried, and what is she really raved about?
Well, I think her favorite redemption or favorite flight that she's ever taken was having her own apartment on Etihad first class. She's flown since she's been 4 months old, and quite extensively. And she's kind of gotten used to the idea of how to behave on, especially in premium cabin. And so she's very self-sufficient, and just loves the independence that the business class seat offers, and first class. And so, she was incredibly happy to take a shower at 40,000 feet and kind of have a butler, take care of her, and have, it was really nice on Etihad. We had 3 people in the cabin, the first class cabin. And basically 3 crew members servicing us the entire flight. So, she was made to feel like a princess. They came and played with her and hung out with her, and she really loved that experience. She also loved Cathay First as well, and she's had a lot of experience. And I think one of the more interesting experiences was on WestJet when we went to fly out to London, Ontario, from Calgary. And she made friends with the FA and helped with the garbage pickup in one of the services. And so she wore the WestJet scarf and everything, and then told me she wanted to be a flight attendant. This was when she was very young. And then WestJet was nice enough to actually put a note on our reservation on the return, and bumped us up into the North American business class, which was nice. So I think she's always had a soft spot in her heart for WestJet as well.
Really? And I was going to jump in and say, because I know you worked for WestJet for a period, that if she's developed these tastes, then she probably doesn't want daddy's employee travel pass.
Yeah, like I said, we don't mind so much flying economy in North America, because typically the longest flight you'll see from Calgary is 6, 7, 8 hours. So it's passable. It's not the greatest, obviously, but we've flown overnight direct from Calgary to Halifax, and that was fine. And she's small enough that she doesn't really care, as long as she kind of gets to see something new. So she doesn't mind flying WestJet, and we still do a decent amount of domestic travel on WestJet. But I think that if you asked her, she would probably prefer being in premium cabin for sure.
Well, you brought up WestJet. Let's talk WestJet. I think it's not on the radar for a lot of non-Canadian travelers. I became aware when I lived in New York, and Delta developed a partnership with them, where I showed up for my flight in LaGuardia to Toronto, and the gate agents were being staffed by like kids in t-shirts and jeans. Where's my Delta flight? And then, but I got on board. I mean, it's a very straightforward experience, but I love the little lemon zest packets that come with the flight, and then I had a quick flight over, and that's what I knew for a few years.
Yeah. I worked at WestJet in the loyalty department as the interim senior manager for loyalty for a period where I ran a team of 6 individuals, of analysts and marketers that were concentrated on the loyalty program, and trying to extract as much value from our top tier members as possible. And so that meant promotions and really understanding the deep analytics of how people behave in as top tier members of a loyalty program, and trying to really understand how it is, or what keeps people flying, what do they value, those kinds of things. Obviously, every individual's unique, but generally, you have kind of a general bucket of what people really value, and it was really interesting, kind of getting that insight, and then also being able to speak individually with some of our top tier members. And really validating what we were extracting from the data we were seeing.
Oh, wow. So with the peek behind the curtain, and frequent flyers often feel like these programs are staffed by people that just don't get them, right? Or deliberately or not. But you're one of us in the sense that you have this interest in travel. And perhaps some of your colleagues didn't come from that. They might have come from, say, a finance or a marketing background, from a different industry. How did you communicate what it's like? I don't know if you consider yourself an av geek, but that love for flying. How did you communicate that to colleagues who are just going to another corporate job?
Well, I think in general, people that work for airlines tend to be av geeks as well. When we launched the 787, you needed to pay our cleaners a lot of extra money to clear all the face smudges off the windows as people were watching the plane roll on the tarmac for the first time. And so, I think in general, everyone that worked at WestJet, broad brush, obviously, but I think everyone was a big fan of airlines and aircraft. But, back to your kind of question around, how do we kind of convey some of the passion that we have as loyalty enthusiasts in a loyalty program, and do the people that work in that program have the same kind of background? And, to be quite frank, unfortunately, the answer is not a real positive one, in that a lot of those folks tended to come from different parts of WestJet and were kind of, new to loyalty. I mean, they had, when I left, there were, I think there were two people that I'm aware of that they brought in that had some background in loyalty. One worked for Avios. The other one, who was the director of the group, had worked for Emirates. So he had some background. He also worked for Collison, so understood the lounge side of things. So it was really interesting talking to them and getting their perspective on things. But other people within the group, they tended to come from other aspects. And the VP who ran the group actually came from supply chain. And so there was kind of a bit of a challenge in having people understand the value of loyalty, and some of the things that we were trying to do often were difficult, because not only did we need to convince other departments within WestJet that our ideas were valid and would provide value, but it was also, we had to take that first step of explaining it and having people within the group of loyalty understand it as well. So, if you have to kind of explain that, there's always going to be some sort of information lost in translation. So as they, tried to sell our ideas upwards, they didn't have the same level of understanding or potentially passion of what we were trying to accomplish. So I often found it very frustrating trying to get things done. I was actually in charge of the frequent flyer programs of the redemption partners, as well as our own loyalty program, which is called Member Exclusive, which is the award inventory for WestJet. And there were a few interesting things I was trying to do, but we were often at odds with revenue management, whose purpose at the airline is to make money. And as you can imagine, when I was there, WestJet was a publicly traded company. And so these guys were always interested in how their quarterly results looked. So to get attention from them to try to put forward and develop a long-term idea that would take some time to implement and return value on was often a very difficult challenge.
Yeah, and I don't know how much the program looks like it did when you were there, but when I'm glancing at the current benefits, what jumps out to me more familiar with some of the U.S. programs is you've got Gold, which 6 times a year gets advanced seat selection, but yet gets unlimited lounge access for the traveler and immediate family and guest vouchers.
Yeah.
Which it seems to me a U.S. program is absolutely reversed, where they'll hand out all kinds of seat selection to elites, but then lounge access is incredibly hard to come by, and I'm curious where that leads. I guess I don't know the Westjet lounge experience, to be honest. I've used some of the third-party lounges on Priority Pass when flying Westjet.
Yeah, so Westjet doesn't have currently any of its own lounges. They're all third-party and largely the same lounges that you're experiencing through Priority Pass. However, the flagship lounge out of Calgary is being built. I don't have a timeline as to when it's supposed to be opening, but I believe it's supposed to be later on towards the end of this year. I think October was the last I'd heard. The flagship lounge actually it's a very interesting value proposition there. Westjet has worked very closely with the Calgary Airport Authority, being that it's based out of Calgary, so they have very strong relationships. And the Airport Authority went so far as to help move the main security checkpoint from a different gate to a gate that's right in front of this new lounge, to kind of have that view of envy if you couldn't get in when you went through security. And so that's slated to be open later. But what's interesting is that the head of digital, his name is Alfredo Tan, actually came from Facebook, and he had a lot of contacts within Silicon Valley. And they had what they called their first ever hackathon for the Westjet Lounge. And they brought in companies like Salesforce, IBM, Apple, Facebook, all these big companies to basically have a case competition to come up with ideas on how to develop a lounge, largely technology based. And I don't have all the details of what they ended up with because budget was always a concern. But they were looking at very interesting things like, if a plane took off and you could see it through the window, one of the ideas was to have kind of a marker track where that plane was going to and details about the flight, things like that. Very interactive. But with all the changes of what's happened with COVID, I have no idea what's actually going to be in that lounge. But in terms of why did they do the unlimited lounge, I alluded to the fact that learning what is of value to our top tier members was that they travel plenty for work, and a lot of times they get all the ancillaries paid for by their work. So they get seat selection, they get free bag, all that stuff is just it's nothing to them, right? So what really matters to them, and I think you probably hear this many times, is that as a road warrior, because you're away from home for so long, that when you actually take a family vacation, you want to show off to your family that, hey, look, this is what me being away gets us as a family while we travel, which is why they're allowing unlimited access to the lounges for the member as well as family members. So that is kind of a unique offering that you don't see very often in lounges. And you could have a very large family group. I think it's up to 8 people family. So, that's always nice. As a traveler, when I travel with my wife and daughter, nothing irks me more than going into a lounge, like a Priority Pass lounge where I've got access for 2, but my daughter, who barely eats, just needs to be with us, gets charged $27 Right? That just irks me a lot. So I can imagine that as a frequent flyer, if you're traveling for vacation with your family and being told at the door that you could only get one other person in, that could be quite bothersome. Financially, it's an interesting approach because it can be quite expensive to have people in the lounge. So it'll be interesting to see if they pare back that benefit or not.
Yeah, and flagship lounge, when I hear words like that, it doesn't sound like they're trying to be a budget airline. It sounds like they're ramping up and going after Air Canada. Is that
well, yeah, that's the intent. Now, I guess the challenge is that Air Canada is the incumbent, and they really understand their top tier members. The lounges have been really good for a long time. And the advent of their signature series lounges in Vancouver and Toronto make it even that much more attractive to be an Air Canada top tier member. But when I moved over to WestJet, one of the reasons I did so was the launch of the 787 and the idea that they were actually going to put a business class that was comparable to Air Canada, and in some respects even better. Excuse me. The person who actually designed the WestJet pods was the same guy who did the Q suites for Qatar, and he's since moved on to Air Italy. It was almost like budget wasn't much of a concern when they decided to develop business class, because they really wanted to go after the business traveler. And so all of that included, things that we talked about earlier, which is both the hard product and the soft product. So, when I toured the 787 the first time, I was pretty impressed. They had some very nuanced touches that are quite unique as a Canadian airline. For example, if you're flying to Europe and you're doing a red eye, as you're starting to land, you hear the call of the loon, famous Canadian bird, as your wake-up call as the lights start coming up. And so just very small touches like that. The food is actually excellent. Some of the better food I've had in a domestic business class. And they had flown that flight from Calgary to Toronto as they were getting their certification. And so I flew it, I think, 3 times in business class, and it was excellent. Very great service. They were definitely going after the Air Canada top tier members. But it was definitely a challenge because, as you know, once you become a million miler or a diamond member or a 100K super elite, it becomes very difficult to pry those people away. But that is the intent, was to try to secure some of those big margin people to come over to WestJet. And they were making changes to the hard product on both the 787, which was brand new, as well as retrofitting all the 737s that they've got to a true business class, or domestic business class, which was 2x2. Previously, they were 3x3 with a blocked middle, so a European business class. And to be frank, it was nothing special. So they're really upping their game and spending a little bit of money to try to get that going. But like I said, Air Canada's had that product for a very long time. It'll be interesting to see if they can pry away some of those top tier members.
It seems like Calgary as a base makes a lot of sense, both geography and industry wise.
Yeah. Interestingly, when we launched the 787, we partnered. Well, the JV with Delta, I think, is finalized now, but I'm not 100% sure. But one of the reasons the JV was put in place was the idea that Delta has a pretty strong network on the West Coast, and the idea was that it would filter or bring people to Calgary as a international hub. And as the 787 started establishing international routes, they fly to London, Paris, Dublin, and Barcelona now, I believe, and now Rome, I think. And as they expand, the idea was to take some of that international travel with the weaker Canadian dollar and a pretty strong product to be able to fly Americans with a stop over in Calgary and then fly over to Europe or potentially Asia in the future.
I'd be all for it, Delta Flyer. The award pricing is so problematic for Delta with all of its partners, including WestJet, that it's often additive. It's whatever the WestJet flight would cost, plus Delta adding, the bazillion miles that they might do, and then it seems to have a magnifying effect when the alchemy of the two together. So I've never redeemed a Delta award on WestJet because of that. They're paid cash. Yeah. Mehul is asking, first he had a great experience flying to St. Martin, where his WestJet flight was delayed, and they compensated him for missing his onward flight to Saba, which was on an entirely different airline. So he's well disposed to WestJet, but he's asking, what do you think of WestJet dollars? So this is the rewards currency instead of what some might call miles. Right?
So I have a very interesting relationship with WestJet dollars. I really dislike them. And the reason is that, as a WestJetter, I saw that the WestJet dollar was something that really held WestJet back in terms of being able to generate revenue. And Stefan, I'm sure that you can appreciate that airlines generate a ton of revenue through their currencies. It was very, very difficult to really make any sort of money by selling WestJet dollars, simply because one WestJet dollar was the equivalent of one Canadian dollar. So it's not like you could buy, I don't know, a pack of gum and get, one WestJet dollar for it, right? That would be ridiculous. And the other thing is that they don't have fractional WestJet dollars, so you couldn't earn like 3 WestJet cents or something like that on a pack of gum. And even if you could, right? How rewarding is it to earn 3 WestJet cents on a pack of gum? Like, it just, you'd think like this is going to take forever to get anywhere. The other problem,
it's like a Simpsons episode where they're going to Krusty Land, and it's like, why should I trade my money for these fun dollars?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, because they're fun.
The other problem is that WestJet has done itself quite a disservice in that WestJet dollars for Canadians are largely known as basically an offset on a regular price ticket. So I mentioned member exclusive, which is the distressed inventory of WestJet. And again, they've done themselves a huge disservice right currently. Member exclusive fares are no longer available on WestJet because they're, quote, updating the system. I don't know what they're actually doing. They have been very secretive about it. But even if it was in place, people didn't really understand what member exclusive fares were. So very poor marketing there. I knew about it obviously because I ran the program, but it can be quite lucrative, right? So you can fly transcon from Vancouver to New York, anywhere from in Canada and the US, for 125 WestJet dollars one way plus tax. So roughly about, I think it's about $40 Canadian for taxes if you're coming out of a Canadian airport because of the airport taxes. But essentially for $160, $170 that you can fly transcon, and the award availability was insane. It was quite generous, but people didn't know about it. And another thing that people didn't know is that WestJet dollars, the idea was that you had to earn them through the credit card or flying on WestJet. But because of the points partnership with points.com, you would actually go through the flow and search for a member exclusive fare. The idea was that you had to have 100% of the WestJet dollars in your account in order to redeem. But as part of the flow, as you walk through the process, if the system detected you didn't have enough WestJet dollars, they would just redirect you to points.com, where you could buy the WestJet dollars almost on par. You could buy 3,000 WestJet dollars for something like $150 in fees, which is insane. And so
Points.com's a Canadian company, right? They don't have an excuse for a misunderstanding about how this should work.
Yeah. So I hated it for that reason, in that it wasn't an engaging points program. But the other thing I really disliked about it was that you couldn't sell those points to retailers because it was just too expensive. I mean, right now, the biggest purchaser of WestJet dollars is RBC, the financial institute partner. And in order to earn one WestJet dollar, you actually have to spend about $66.66 in order to earn one WestJet dollar. And so you can imagine if you're a retailer and you're telling your people that your customers that you have to spend almost $70 to earn one WestJet dollar. It's not a very exciting value proposition. And again, even if you did spend $70 at a retailer and you got one WestJet dollar, it's like, what am I going to do with one WestJet dollar? Offset the price of a ticket by $1? Like, why would I collect that currency? And so it becomes an issue that you can't sell that currency, and therefore you can't raise revenue for the airline, and therefore you can't use that revenue to improve the program. So, WestJet is caught in a vicious cycle, whereas Aeroplan, who's just launched a new program, is caught in what I believe is a virtuous cycle. So they have a very manageable currency program. They've got excellent flight availability, a great network, and now with no YQ in their program, people are going to want to fly the program. And then as people start collecting points, they're going to demand from the retailers that they want to be able to collect points. And then as they demand that, retailers need to start buying points from Air Canada. And as people, or as retailers start buying points, then there's more money to invest back into the program, get more flight reward availability within Air Canada, and negotiate better access to reward inventory with partners. You know, all these things, they're going in the right direction, whereas WestJet, I believe, is going the opposite, wrong direction.
Yeah, I was at Taste of the Danforth in Toronto 5 years ago, and I did a joking blog post about how bad the card bonuses are, because there was a BMO card, was a Toronto FC Air Miles card. You get 400-mile bonus. And then I got lectured of how it's actually worth something. But I mean, related to, I'm looking at WestJet rewards, tiers, and benefits, which I live and breathe loyalty programs as a hobby. I can understand most I've encountered except the new United program, but I cannot for the life of me figure out. It says the tier is on 100% of WestJet marketed flights flown, but then it says earn WestJet dollars at these rates: teal 0.5%, silver 3%, gold 5%, platinum 8% for flying WestJet flights. That means absolutely nothing to me. I don't know 8% of what and how that.
So adds up to you're right. It's complicated, and unless you're really willing to invest and understand what the program is, you at a glance you would have no idea what that means. What it actually means is that as a platinum, you would earn 8% of your base fare spend back in WestJet dollars. And so, if you had the WestJet credit card, it gives you another 2%. So in actuality, as a platinum member holding the credit card and putting flights on the credit card, you're earning 10% back, which is actually incredibly generous. But going back to the idea that the person who runs the program is in supply chain and has to answer for financial results. You don't know the program, but the way they got to 8% with the platinum is that they took away 0.5% from the teals. So as you can imagine, as someone who's looking to join a new program as a new flyer, imagine you're a new executive and you're going to fly a lot, and you have a choice of Air Canada or WestJet. Well, number one, you have to start as a teal. So how attractive is earning 0.5%, or sorry, 0.5 of a dollar for every dollar you spend in order to get up to the platinum level where it actually makes sense, right? So you're not likely to join the program and you'll just go straight to Air Canada, which again, this is one of my problems with the program and the people that run it, is that it's cutting off your nose to spite your face. Sure, you're making it more attractive to the platinum members, but what happens to your funnel of people that are growing into the program? They're not going to get started because the value proposition at the low end is so poor that they're likely to just start another program. So these are some of the things that weren't considered when they relaunched the program and introduced the platinum tier. And you don't hear a lot about it because people that are new into the program or teal members or even silver members, they tend not to be the ones that are very engaged with programs, so they don't tend to complain a lot. They're not the ones on Flyer Talk, right? And they're not the ones yelling and getting news stories printed about it. But I can tell you.
Does that happen in Canada, though? You guys are so.
We don't yell ever.
Nicer consumers.
But yeah, I mean, I think in general, I think long term, I think the WestJet program's in a lot of trouble because they have really reduced the funnel in terms of number of people that are wanting to join the program organically.
That is a big hurdle to get over that teal when I look at the dollar requirements. And I mean, that whole thing about the dollars, I understand. I feel like I can see how it's clear and it makes sense to the bottom line, but I also feel like there was something so magical across the world, across flyers, of a mile. And that captivated 30, 40 years of travelers with this incredible marketing innovation. And however you made it work, there was something almost democratic in one sense, but incredibly elitist in another, and it captivated people. And the dollars, like I said, the New United program. I used to be a 1K flyer. I didn't even invest the time to try to understand the POPs and the this and the that. It just doesn't connect to the travel I love.
Yeah, and I had this argument many times, is that the whole world runs on miles and points. Like, do you think that somehow the entire loyalty world that's been established for 40, 50 years, that they missed the boat and you got it right with dollars? Like, you're the only program that does this, and you think that you're right. I just don't understand how they've stayed with WestJet dollars for so long. And I'm quite passionate about this idea, but the whole idea was at the start of the program was to make it easy to understand for Canadians and easy to redeem, and it is. But again, you spend thousands of dollars and you end up with 150 WestJet dollars, and most people are just going to take that off the price of the ticket that they pay retail. And like, that's not rewarding at all. Like, it doesn't feel free. It doesn't feel like you're really benefiting from the program. They do have one real decent benefit with the credit card, which is the travel companion voucher, which previously was quite good. Domestically, you could fly $99 return as long as you bought a base fare for the first person. And that even allowed you to go into the premium economy, or the European business class I talked about. So it could save you quite a bit of money. So if you, say, for example, flew Vancouver to New York and flew in WestJet premium economy, maybe that costs you, I don't know, $1,500 return. But the second person would be $99 plus tax, which is it's a interesting value proposition. But not everyone took advantage of it. About 50% of people that have those certificates end up cashing them in. So, it is one of those things in the credit card program that is a benefit that people think they're going to use, but end up not using. Much like the vouchers that you get from all the programs, is that, sure, it looks good. I've got 30 vouchers or e-credits in my account, but I don't fly them or use them. So really,
then you get the mental pressure. I've got to spend more money than I intended and travel I didn't intend, just to feel like I'm relieved that I've used them.
That's right, exactly. So yeah, I have an interesting history, and ultimately the reason I left to come to this to Worley, who I work for now, is that I saw the writing on the wall in that some of the things I was trying to do in terms of revamping the member exclusive program to make it more lucrative. I saw it hitting brick walls all the time, and I didn't see the vision of it being realized for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I couldn't sit idly by as I knew that the program was, turning downwards, and I didn't want to be responsible for it, as it got eaten up, because I knew Air Canada was going to be relaunching their program, and I knew that they were going to make some interesting additions to their program to make it more palatable and interesting to people or Canadians. And so ultimately, I didn't see a path forward there, and decided that I should get out and well, number one, you may or may not know, but the airline industry does not pay well at all. And so I actually took a 50% pay cut to go to WestJet. And so now that I'm back in the industry, I figured that rather than change the program from within, I'll just earn extra money and fly whoever I want.
Last one, just curious, your prediction on, people are calling the death of airline alliances up until this year, and then it's joint ventures, it's deep investment, and then the travel industry has this massive collapse with the pandemic. And I'm wondering, is an alliance, is SkyTeam in the future for WestJet? Is it just hang out in the Delta joint venture? Is it go it alone, more partnerships? What does an airline like WestJet that has growth ambitions do in the current environment?
Well, I can tell you that when I took over the program, there was an intent to actually launch 3 new partners, and I can't tell you who those were, but the intent was to grow by 2 or 3 partners every year. And I did talk to the network guys and the guys that held the partnership relationships with our current partners, which were Delta, Air France, KLM, and Qantas. And I asked the question because that is typically people are often speculating that WestJet is kind of ideal to join SkyTeam, especially with a strong JV with Delta. And I asked that question, and the response back from the guy who led that group was that never in a million years are we going to join an alliance. And so I kind of got a sense from that conversation that I think the days of alliances growing and adding more members are probably long gone. I think that JVs and partnerships are probably the way they're going to work in the future. I think there's just more flexibility with the airline being able to set their own rules and work with whomever they want as a partner, rather than joining an alliance and kind of being very restricted in what you can and can't do. And I don't know for certain, but I get a sense that as you join an alliance, you're kind of the low man on the totem pole. You don't get to make a whole lot of decisions, and you may have a vote, but the founding members typically are the ones that end up making the decisions, and you kind of have to fall in line with it. And I'm sure the financial structures are not always the most conducive to small airlines, and so I can't see WestJet ever joining an alliance for that reason and many others. But having a strong JV partnership with Delta was a top priority, and I do know that the intent was to have WestJet join in another strong JV partnership with another airline that controlled a region like Europe, for example. So maybe it was KLM or Air France or that group of companies. But essentially, I think their intent was to establish strong JV partnerships on the continents that they wanted to travel or wanted to have connections into, rather than join an alliance.
Yeah, that's a disconnect I feel as a traveler, where I around the world, I know what Star Gold is, I know what Sky Priority is. I'm a Delta Diamond. I don't have a clue what I'm getting on WestJet, and it certainly wasn't seat selection, but the audience has been patiently waiting for Aeroplan.
Okay.
So, Rick Shaver, Traveler Century Club Canada, he's marketing background, and shocked that Bean Counter is in charge of a consumer marketing program. Air Canada Elite since '89. He's redeemed over 5 million miles. He tried WestJet for the first time in 2019. Pretty good for 1-hour flights, but he's very curious. What do you think of the new Air Canada Aeroplan program, especially for elite, super elite members? This is launching in November. Yeah,
I mean, for elite and super elites, I'm a 50K member of Air Canada, and I have to say that as someone that has seen both sides and understands why Air Canada and Aeroplan are doing this, I'm actually struggling to understand the value that you're going to receive as a top tier member with Air Canada and Aeroplan. I think that a lot of the benefits that you would normally covet as a top tier member, like lounge access and same day change and all those kinds of things, they're all going to be available for what I believe is a $600 credit card, annual fee credit card. So realistically, you can't get into the international lounges for Air Canada and the Maple Leaf lounges until you're, I believe, 35K. But essentially, for that $600 credit card, you're more into the 50K territory, the benefits of 50K. Excuse me. So I think that I would be concerned, or I am concerned as an Air Canada frequent flyer, that people are just going to get the credit card, and the lounges, the Maple Leaf lounges are nice, but they were already crowded. There's quite a few top tier members in Canada that are part of the program that have lounge access, and now, as you can imagine, as this, sure, it's an expensive annual fee credit card, but if you're getting lounge access, if you're getting priority baggage, you're getting priority security, you're getting front of line service at the counters, you're getting same day change. If you're doing that, what's the benefit of flying Air Canada? I mean, they do have a few things that are interesting in the program. You can convey your benefits through a certificate to a friend or family member and show them what it's like to be a top tier member. But again, if that person just got the credit card, they get the same thing. But they do have 50% reduction on Aeroplan redemptions. You'll get a certificate depending on what level you're at, you'll get a certain number of certificates. And it means that you can redeem for, say for example, you wanted to go to, from Vancouver to New York, the same example I've always been using. With the top tier member, you can redeem a certificate. And if that round trip was, say, $60,000, $70,000 in business class, points in business class, you can redeem that voucher for 50% off, which is nice. But I think it still doesn't address the fact that you're losing. You become less elite, I guess you would say. And I think that Stefan, you're a frequent flyer, and I remember when I got my first status and how proud I was of that status, and how hard I had to work that status. And now knowing that, some Joe Blow who never flew a day in his life with Air Canada now has a $600 credit card and can now get all the benefits that I earned, I think I'd be pretty peeved. I mean, I think I might kick myself for making the mistake of flying that much, and rather would have just gotten the credit card. So I think, it'll be interesting because when they launched the program, they said they've told us about 60% of what the program is. So it'll be interesting if the remaining 40% is more concentrated on showing some love to the top tier members within Air Canada, because right now I have significant concerns about the eliteness and how you're made to feel as a top tier member, especially if you're going to the lounge and you're seeing it even more crowded than it already is, and couple that with the fact that COVID has taken away the a la carte food and now your bag lunch, and now it's almost not even worth going to the lounge anymore. So it's interesting that they've gone that direction. But the side of me that sees the airline side understands that why they're doing it, and it is to attract more people into the program. And again, it's back to that virtuous cycle. If you have that $600 credit card, you see how well you're treated with that benefit, and maybe you want to earn it for yourself legitimately. Maybe you want to be 100K. But even if you don't, you sign up for that credit card, and they have contracts with their financial partners to have kickbacks on people that sign up for the credit cards. And for at least at Westjet, we got a percentage of every dollar spent on the credit card back as part of our partnership agreement. And so, if you can get more people in the credit card and they're spending money on that credit card as a first top of wallet credit card, then you're going to earn a lot of money for your program. And potentially that means that as you earn more and more of that revenue, potentially you can do special things for people that are legitimately in your top tier, your membership, right? Maybe that means, I know that in the past they had a contest to give somebody a lease for a BMW for a year, someone who won a contest with Air Canada. Maybe they start doing more and more of those kinds of things, right? And really showing the love. But currently in its current iteration, I have deep concerns about how some of these people might be feeling in Air Canada's top tier elites.
Yeah, exactly how thrilled I am when a Delta Reserve cardholder gets a tiebreaker on the upgrade list. Yep, I love that move.
Yeah,
and Altitude 100 had this. I just thought when I heard of it, it was the ultimate frequent flyer benefit. Instead of this 50% off, whatever the price might be, which the price could be extremely high, right? The Altitude 100s currently have these, eight awards a year that they can get at the standard award chart price, as long as there's a revenue bill for sale.
Yeah.
And that,
yes, Air Canada had something similar, and it was called IKK. And it basically meant that you could use, I think you had a certain number. I didn't have any myself, But you had a certain number that you could, basically call your concierge, say you want to redeem this certificate, and get a standard redemption for any seat that was available on the flight, as long as there was one seat left.
See, that to me feels, as a frequent flyer, that to me, even if I paid maybe more miles on average, that feels like a better benefit than a 50% off voucher.
Yeah, I agree. I think that typically if you're using that, you're kind of in a situation where you need it, right? You're not, if you need to get to a funeral or something, or a wedding, a last minute thing, having that ability to snatch up that last seat and not put money out of your pocket for it, that's a nice feeling. But you still need award inventory so the new Air Canada program has just the classic, which is award inventory, and then you can also do the revenue pricing, and that certificate still gives you 50% off both types. But when you're in that situation where you need that last minute seat, I don't know that you're really caring about 50% back. I think you just want the seat at the regular fare, the regular redemption rate, rather than have to dig in and say, okay.
It just feels VIP. It's just like, that seat is mine. Boom.
Yeah. So I think that the idea that you can just say to anybody, hey, I can get any seat I want in Air Canada. All I have to do is, as a top tier member, I plop down the certificate, and I'm paying this last minute seat to Hawaii at Christmas. I'm paying 40,000 points return. Like, can you do that? Because I can do that because I'm a top tier member.
And Rick's saying, given the program has been repatriated by an airline rather than a loyalty company, we've been promised they will look after top tier flyers. Only makes sense. So I'm not sure if he's optimistic. And then Anthony's saying, so do you also need to spend 6,000 cash on AC flights to keep your 50K, or can you just, I guess, so he's saying, can you get it just with their new Premier credit cards? I think your point is that you're not getting the actual status with the credit card, but you're getting benefits that are so similar. It's just as almost the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So, the benefits are priority security, priority baggage, priority check-in, and lounge access, and same-day change. And so, those are all benefits that you would get roughly at the 50K level. And again, you don't get the bag tag, you don't get the welcome letter from Kevin Russo, but you get all the benefits, and to me, that's really what's important.
Now, before I ask a heavy closing one on awards you're booking, I see our correspondent from Tokyo, Shiraishi Hiroko of EnjoyFFP.jp just joined, and I happen to have seen a lot of sushi and the occasional ramen in your Instagram feed. So, Calgary, tell us what we should be eating.
From Calgary?
Yes. You did. You did vote for one sushi place in Calgary.
Well, I mean, my favorite restaurant in Calgary is called Workshop Kitchen and Culture, and it's kind of everything's a fusion restaurant nowadays, but it's a Canadian fusion restaurant, and it's really well known in terms of the quality of the food that's there. And they do something called the low heat lunch and low heat dinner, which is a chef's option of what they want to serve you. You don't actually get to choose. You just tell them if you have any allergies, and you do either a 3 or 5 course dinner for a decently affordable price. It tends to be a more of a higher end restaurant, but some of the best food I've ever had in Calgary. But in terms of there are certainly better restaurants around the world that I've eaten at, but for Calgary, Workshop is a definite recommendation. And most places here in Calgary do a pretty good steak, because we're known for Alberta steak or Alberta beef, and so lots of good steak restaurants here in Calgary as well.
And tips on cooking a large piece of meat, because that figures in your feed as well. Yeah,
so I took up smoking probably about 5 or 6 years ago. Built my own smoker out of an oil drum, and learned how to smoke a brisket, and tried to perfect it. and it's pretty difficult, to be honest. There've been times when it's turned out pretty tough or very much like a pot roast. But for the most part, it's been fun. But I've traveled. I've had the pleasure of eating at Franklin Barbecue in Austin, Texas, and he's a hero of mine, and the way he does his brisket is unbelievable, and that's something I always strive for. We've got a few barbecue restaurants here that do a Texas style barbecue, but I mean, they don't hold a candle to Franklin and some of the barbecue I've had in Houston and Texas. And, I'm a big fan of smoked meats and always striving to try to perfect the craft. But it's an expensive thing to try to figure out as well. You're paying $150 for a brisket, and it could turn out very, very poorly. And because the brisket's so big that you're typically inviting 20 people to your house, and so always very anxious when you're cutting into it as to whether you did a good job or not. And everyone's very, very gracious and tells you did a great job, and you're chewing on beef jerky sometimes. So it's a lot of pressure and it's a lot of time investment. But just like anything in life, I think anything that you you should try to do well. So it's something I try to learn and perfect over time, but I'm certainly not at the expert level yet.
Navigating a Taiwanese night market.
As a traveler, I'm not a big fan of crowds, to be honest. And night markets are exactly that. They're noisy, a lot of people. Here's a hot tip that I'm sure a lot of people already know, but don't travel to Asia in August or July. It's ridiculous. My parents are from Taiwan, and we went, I told them we were going to Taiwan, and they asked us when we're going. And, I'd heard all the time, like, November's a really good time. And I said August, and they're like, you're insane. I'm like, how bad could it be? I mean, we've had 40 degrees every once in a while here in Calgary. But yeah, no, it's ridiculous. You don't want to ever do it. So, there were the food at the night markets are incredible. And it's so cheap. But it was so hot that, we'd gone to Rohi Market, and we had this pepper pork bun, which is very famous, and it was unbelievably delicious. And it was so good that I was dreaming about it. But I didn't want to go back to the market because it was so hot, even at 9 at night. So my daughter and I, we made a pact, and we went late at night and just took the train, grabbed some buns, and jumped back on the air-conditioned train and back to the hotel. Didn't stick around. So, I would say that, when you go to those night markets, go on an empty stomach and just try everything because it's so cheap. That pepper pork bun, I think, was $1.50 Canadian, and it was really filling. You could get dumplings, like 6 or 10 dumplings for 70 cents. It's just ridiculous. And the food is so good. But again, try not to go when it's 40 degrees and 85% humidity.
Taiwan's one of the first targets if COVID-related time travel were to open up, but it wouldn't. Yeah, as I said, it'd be November to February or my limit. It's incredible. How about a koala experience on the list of top things you can do as a parent? As
a parent, I love surprising my family, and this is it's become such a MO that they expect surprises now, so it kind of has lost a bit of its luster. But when we travel, especially on our big trips, I tend to do something special. And when we were in Australia, we went and did the koala experience and got to pet a koala, which is fairly common to do in Australia, but it was just nice to be able to do. But one of the the most memorable things that we ever did on a day in Cape Town, we went to a cheetah reserve, and we got a chance to play with a meerkat and pet a cheetah, and that was an incredible experience. And that same day, we went to a monkey zoo and got to play with monkeys as well. And they were eating marshmallows off our shoulders and out of our hands and things like that. So those are things that I like to do for my family to try to make it memorable. And one of the reasons I want to get my daughter to 100 countries is that as I was growing up as a kid, one of the things I always kind of thought was that, the way we do things in North America, it has to be the right way because, we have a pretty great life here. Everything's easy. And then all the things you read about in your social studies books, like, about Japan or Germany or whatever during World War II. That's all you really know about the world. And you really don't broaden your horizons. And it really kind of, when I finally got a chance to travel when I was in my 20s, you start realizing that, the world is a lot bigger and people are people around the world. And so I want her to realize that, North Americans' ways of doing things is not necessarily the right way. It's not the wrong way either. It's just a way. And there are certainly people around the world that are a lot worse off than we are, that are potentially a lot more happy. And I just want her to understand that, there's more of the world than what's laid out in front of her. And so, as part of that, I tried to give her experiences, unique experiences from around the world, so that she can form some of those memories and maybe have a connection or two from people that she's dealt with from around the world. So the world doesn't seem as scary as it did to me when I was growing up. And the idea of traveling to far-flung places where there were atrocities committed, didn't seem all that appealing. Seemed scary. I remember reading about Rwanda and the genocide that happened when I was in high school, and I'm thinking, like, there's no way I'd ever want to visit there. But now, Rwanda is very high on my bucket list of places I'd like to visit. It's apparently the Singapore of Asia, or the brightest country in the African continent. And so I think there's a lot to be said about forming opinions of places you've never been to. And so like I said, I try to give her as many good memories as possible so that she feels comfortable in going back when she's an adult, and raising her kids the same way.
Wonderful. Golfing as a lefty.
Yeah. Clubs tend to be cheap because they typically can't sell the clubs because there's not that many lefties. Interestingly, Canada has the highest per capita population of lefty golfers in the world. I have no idea why. It probably has to do with hockey, because I think we're about 50-50 split hockey left-handed and right-handed players. But I think in the world, it's about 10% of the world. And I think in Canada, it's something like 35 or 40%. A lefty in Canada is not that weird, but for other people around the world, it's quite odd. I'd gone on a golf trip with my buddy to Palm Springs, and we needed to rent two bags of left-handed clubs, and they were having a hard time fitting our order because nobody ever came to Palm Springs looking for left-handed clubs.
I'm a lefty, and even when I caddy, caddying for lefties, I would get nervous because I felt like they were going to shank it right into my forehead. It's a different look. Golfing in Alberta.
It's pretty great. We have some really nice courses in Alberta, especially the mountain courses. And it tends to be not too bad. I mean, in the mountain courses, you're looking between $120 to $150 a round. And then carts usually extra on top of that for about $20 to $25. But as an American, that's peanuts to you guys. I think that's 35 cents, I think, or something like that for American. So it's actually, Alberta has some really nice golf courses. But the challenge is that we have about 3 months of summer that you can golf in. So it's a challenge. And we've got quite a few passionate people that love golf in Alberta. And because of the limited season that we've got and the limited number of courses that we've got in comparison to the US, for example, it tends to be difficult to get tee time. So usually you're booking a week out if you can get it. And sometimes, we've been getting 7 a.m. tee times of recent because that's all that's really available nowadays. We often try to think about places we can go golfing in the U.S., but that's probably unlikely to happen this year due to COVID. We're thinking about what we can do to keep our golf game going in the winter, but it's going to be a bit of a challenge.
And we'll close with the Aeroplan Awards you're booking before November 8th and the awards you're raring to book from November 8th.
Well, I've been looking. So as I mentioned, we're flying Singapore back from Singapore. And I'm actually looking at booking after because I'm trying to get on. I've always wanted to fly Lufthansa first, but I could never fathom paying that much money in surcharge. So my hope is to try to get us on Lufthansa from Singapore to Frankfurt and Frankfurt to anywhere in North America, and then find a way back. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at. I had booked a mini round the world before they changed the rules with Air Canada Aeroplan to go to Lisbon, Athens, and Montreal for a wedding, and then we were going to have two 24-hour stops in Cairo and Istanbul, and so ended up having to cancel that. But that's kind of what I was thinking of trying to do again if I could. But as I mentioned, we only do one really big trip a year. And for me, 2020 is kind of a write-off, so I don't expect to book anything for 2020. 2021, we're already going to Japan for Sakura season, and then down to Singapore just because I've always wanted to go to Singapore. So that, the trips I think I've got booked for 21 have kind of already used up a lot of my vacation time. So I'm actually personally not looking at anything to book prior to the changeover. In fact, looking forward to the changeover so that I can book some of these first-class products that were difficult to book due to the surcharges.
Fantastic, and such a clear exponent and explainer of the loyalty programs from the inside. It was a wonderful session. Thank you for joining us tonight.
No
Jayce.
problem. Thank you, Stephen. It was great to talk to you, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with you.